Hello, everyone. My name is Gary. Welcome to another episode of xyzpodcast in collaboration with Saigon Hoi Arts Festival. It's been a very blissful Christmas, and I find it quite guilty to get a few people up here as a guest because it's a holiday season. But I'm really thankful for the team, the HKU Village Commoning Team, who are the designers behind the artwork called Our Celestial Commons for the Saigon Hong Art Festival at Gaosai Village. So I have Vincci is a senior lecturer from Division of Landscape Architecture in the Hong Kong University. And along with Vincci, I have Scarlet and Marco and Parco. So hello, everyone. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi. So, Vincci, do you mind to talk a little bit about this, the background behind this kind of like a research project, and the outcome is, I mean, one of the outcomes is an artwork. So yeah, could you please introduce yourself and also the team as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Vincci. As Gary has introduced me, I currently teach at HKU landscape architecture. We actually have been having an ongoing research project about village revitalization called Village Commoning. And this project actually started off in 2021, and we have been working with Gaosai Village. And so it's great that when Saigon Hoi Art Festival started, they invited us to also see if that can be an opportunity to work with the villagers there to develop an artwork together. This is partly because for our research project, we look into commoning practices, commons as a base to develop village revitalization. And so our artwork project really wanted to make it become a channel for us and the villagers to work together to develop something that is important and meaningful to the villagers.
So I find the term commoning is a very interesting one. So since 2021, would you say the research is more oriented on any particular aspect of the study? Like, is it on environmental or maybe on social or more on cultural, would you say?
Actually, it's all three aspects or even more. For our project, it's more research-based, even though a lot of information or findings, of course, we actually have to get it from field work by understanding how villagers work and how they actually live in a community. And so we find that, well, commoning actually is, and commons, probably they are not really something new. What we find out is a lot of local Hong Kong villages, they do have their commons, sometimes more about resource management, how in the old days they may be engaged in farming or fishery industries, so how they share resource, and that develop also associational commons. Say different committees or groupings to organize these resources. And then because of these practices, they also have developed symbolic commons, something more about the culture side. And that's why for our artwork, the inspiration is actually coming from the fact that in Gaosai Village, they used to be fishermen. And what may be more symbolic to them, what may be something more embedded in their fisherman culture, we want to highlight that to share with the general public through the artwork. So the process of how we sat down with the village community, asking them or working with them to figure out what may be the most important cultural identity that they want to share becomes a very important process to us. Yeah.
I think, I mean, the artwork, I suppose, is just one of the output from the research. Along the way, they might be appear on data or diagrams or other forms of presentation. that I think it's very interesting that you mentioned about common is not uncommon anymore. So it's kind of finding the mutual point between so many other sector of life in a way. So looking into the artwork is kind of like looking into the cultural side, but yet it's also something related to astrology and philosophy or religion or whatever. So it's a very complex interpretation of a place. So I would like to go to Scarlet, Marco, and Parco. Do you mind to introduce yourself and also maybe share with us a little bit on your involvement with the project, or overall as the commoning project as well? So maybe we can start with Scarlet.
Hi everyone, I'm Scarlett, the project manager for this research project and also this arts festival or this artwork. My main task is to engage with the villagers. So I am the contact point from the university to the villagers. So I always talk to them and then to liaise with them what we can do with the artwork and to organize the workshop together with the team. Yeah.
So that's how I know about you all and got you all because of Scarlett.
Yeah, that's why I'm the contact point.
She's the vital person in this case. Yeah, so hi Marco and Parco.
Hi. I'm Parco. He's Marco. We've been working together since we were students a few years ago, and we did lots of projects, be it in academic or after academic university life. We actively participate in lots of research with Vincci and also other areas as well, but we also like to do a lot of art projects, and we have a lot of few of the art projects even in Hong Kong and also out of Hong Kong area in the past few years. And in Gaosai project, we mainly rely on the communication with Scarlet and villager and implement some kind of art that related to the village and the culture of the entire project. Because we do have some art and design background, so we mainly working on the form and shape and how we implement villagers' ideas into an actual form of art. So that's our responsibility in the project.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, sorry, Marco, you want to say something?
Oh no.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have one question before we move on to the artwork, if I may.
Yes, please.
Well, looking into the art research project, because myself, I'm also a lecturer and also doing some research as well. Looking into the tricky part about research usually is to look into the design software where the brief or the meaning of action rather than jump into an artwork right away or a workshop. So usually before anything starts, the physical engagement started, there used to be a psychological or thinking process going on. So looking into the process of research that you collected the data maybe from geological or hydrology or human culture or even from the sociology side of a community, they are very often very, very hard to be interpreted or translated into architecture in a way, or even something that we can do because they are mostly maybe in written form or in a verbal or vocal documentation. So could you please share with us like what's the process, and also is there any challenges in translating the research part into whatever you need to do as a hardware or the so-called solution? I wonder, is there any challenges in translating that, or do you see it's just both two side of things? Because or maybe you can share with us what's usually the outcome of this research. Are they limited to be publication or podcast or recording of films rather than architectural outcome?
Maybe I can start first and then Scarlett, Marco, and Parco can add in. For the Village Commoning project, it's true that it does have its own, so to speak, research output agenda. On the more academic side, it's more to find out how the reviving of commons or commoning practices can help to revitalize villages. So in Hong Kong, the current rural situation is many villages do have villagers, but not all of them really live in the villages. And it may be because the production commons, the farming or the fishery industries actually, don't exist in the villages anymore, or many other reasons. So usually in a village, when you visit a village in Hong Kong, there may be a handful of villagers. They're usually very dedicated. They do want to do something for their community. They want to be able to bring more villagers back to live in the place. Anyway, so that's why the Hong Kong government at the moment actually has funding support for academics, for also nonprofit organizations to look into how to actually we can do village revitalizations better. But putting that aside, I think when we actually engage with the Gaosai villagers for this artwork, you could say it's actually kind of a spin-off from what we are supposed to do for the village commoning projects. So we do treat it as kind of an add-on, like a separate project, that because of our we have been working with the Gaosai villagers anyway. It's an ongoing process engagement, and so we also see the art festival's invitation as also an opportunity for us to further our collaboration with the villagers. So back to the artwork, I guess when we first approached the villagers about, okay, we're going to collaborate on developing an artwork together, they are very enthusiastic about sharing their fisherman culture. Not sure, Gary, if you've been to Gaosai Village. They do have a story room. It's a small space, but very rich and dense with village tradition and culture information. So it's a place that villagers have set up a while ago with also Hong Kong government's geopark units to share their local cultures. So in a way, villagers are very sort of comfortable to tell their fisherman culture stories. And so we also want to kind of get go along this direction to see what may be something we can sort of manifest further in the artwork. But I guess what we find challenging is how to sort of break through from the typical sort of known type of fisherman culture that they have been sharing in their existing story room, and how to further this to push this culture item further. And be able to share it more with public. Another thing is maybe Scarlett can help elaborate further later on. When we spoke to the villagers, one other thing is they are also looking for a space or a place in the village that can eventually become their common area and a space that can allow them to have community events to gather. And so the artwork, yes, is an artwork, but we also heard from the villagers that it may be able to serve other functions. So kind of the architectural aspect of it comes in a bit more. Yeah.
So I think also because, like you mentioned, the story room is kind of like serving as a living museum, while the architectural piece is kind of like an extension from the research to trigger a certain attraction to that research as well. So it's kind of interesting that I think it's like you say, perhaps like a spin-off. It's kind of like a triggering point to another research that is kind of still run in parallel in that sense, which is quite interesting that, I mean, along the way you wanted to create something to excite the villagers, because I mean along the way research might appear to be very hard, or maybe too intangible for them, then they couldn't see the
Right,
outcome.
right,
Maybe
right,
I
right.
don't know, maybe that could
Yes,
be one of the
actually,
challenges.
that is a very good point. It did happen. Like sometimes, it's true that when we engage the villagers, to talk about something perhaps too academic or intangible. So from my observation, it's true that when we started to work on the artwork with them, it's something more tangible, something that they can also see kind of the construction of the space eventually happening. And that I think is something villagers they're able to actually contribute more. Yeah.
And because they can see and they can touch in the physical
Right.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting that the artwork itself appear to be more meaningful than looking into the pictures, because that's where the engagement that a lot of visitors, they don't see. They're only able to see the treatment of the roof and the materials and everything. So sorry, but maybe we can invite Scarlet or Marco or Parco to share a little bit more. Anything to add on before we move on to the artwork?
Actually, during the process, we had 3 design workshop with the villagers. For the first one, I think it's very interesting that we had a session because I did exhibition before, and I come from a cultural studies background, and I sort of did a lecture, not a sharing about what is artwork to them. So we tell them there's a different way to convey your story through artworks. One is very sort of very direct, or we can make use of some metaphor, etc. and etc. At that point, they are very quiet. They were very quiet. They were very attentive as well. And then I actually not sure whether they understand what we are trying to do, but we tried our best to tell them what our role is, and then how we are going to translate your story to the artwork. And then I think the design workshop really helps us to create this artwork. Like Parco and Marco, in order to help the villagers to visualize the thing, to make the whole thing tangible, they made a lot of small models to help them visualize everything. I think that's how we communicate with them, and that's how they can contribute more to the project and then comment on the artwork. And their feedback is actually very interesting. Yeah, they are very creative as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so how about Marco and Paco?
Yes, I think Scarlett mentioned the design process and how we organize different designs workshops. This led to exercise that help villagers to visualize the final work. But also, I think one thing that makes this artwork slightly different the others is that the design process is not as linear as the others. So it's not the idea from the artist and then presented to the villagers, to the curator, and then eventually we construct it out. But rather, this is a very, because we have this commoning framework, and we try to put villager in a more upfront position where we actively brainstorm, and then we actively design and make a final decision on the shape and form of the artwork. And this is how the idea behind where we translate our research into this artwork. So I think that's the design process is very unique, and it's very one of the accents of the commoning projects.
Great.
So yeah, you have
I remember.
Well, I mean that's very interesting, that because well, I didn't manage to see the fine details of the roof. There seems to be a lot of almost like images of the sky, is if I can understand it correctly. So it's kind of like intertwined with science, where it's kind of much more advanced science that looking into almost like astronomy point of view. But on the other side, there's a cultural folklore, or there's kind of a superstition going on. But that's where it's kind of like the science and non-science combined together, where it's almost like art and science together, kind of intertwined. Where I interpret and I see it's almost like a stargazing activities going on, where it's almost like a planetarium, the artwork. So but somehow I'm looking to the outlook of the artwork. It's kind of look a bit more high tech-ish. You know, the white lines, and also where the infill is much more informal. Could you? My question would be, could you please tell us about the details, where looking into every single pieces, and also the observation, and also the experience where a visitor would expect. Of course, I would leave this for the visitors to experience on themselves when you can see it and feel it in real life at Kaosai Village. Yeah. So anything to add on that, maybe to talk about the experience of the artwork. And I saw a little bench there, so I suppose you can sort of sit there and enveloped by this artwork.
Maybe I introduce a bit, and then I will need to rely on Marco and Parco Scarlet to add in the details.
Yeah.
So on the big picture side, if you see the name of the artwork, our celestial comments, yes, it's relating to the sky. In our conversations with the villagers, because they are fishermen, so when will be a good time to get on the boat, and get out there to the sea to do the fish catching. They are very smart and have the local wisdom, really, when they look up the sky. Even now, when we schedule to do workshops with them, Hong Kong in the summertime, we have typhoons. The villagers are able to sort of like communicate with us. Oh, like looks like the typhoon is really coming. Look at the sky. When they see the cloud patterns, when they see the color of like how blue the sky is or how gray it is, they can really read the weather. And so we find this very interesting. I mean, for most of us, we live in the urban area of Hong Kong. We rely on looking at the phone these days, checking on internet about to find out about the weather. But for them, they really just look up the sky. So this is something they built up their wisdom. It's relating to their fisherman culture. And so we find this perhaps something we can further develop on. And also another aspect is, I mentioned before, many villagers no longer live in the villages. So Kaosai community is the same. And some of them also emigrated to other places. So kind of in a more poetic way to look at sky, it's one big sky. Some of their fellow villagers actually live abroad at the moment, but when they both, two groups of villagers, they see both are from Kaosai, but they look up the sky, it's the same sky. So it's also a kind of a sense of care and the bonding of the villagers. We want to use the photos of skies to connect that, and that's why you see the small color patches. They are actually extracts from photographs taken by villagers in different. Well, some are taken in Kaosai village, some are taken in somewhere else in Hong Kong or abroad. But we post them and include them in the artwork to have a more holistic understanding of the skies of Kaosai community. Yeah.
I think those are, I do have one thing to add on, because it's a very intangible cultural elements and also asset that we it's hardly captured in numbers. It's very hard to capture this because sometimes it's very hard to say, okay, there's a certain color, it means something, but because I suppose their interpretation of weather is also combined with color and also maybe the size of the cloud, maybe, and also the wind speed. So it's very hard to say 1 is 1, 2 is 2. So it's very factual in a sense. So it's really based on their personal experience where they have been reading the weather for ages. Well, compared to us, I'm not sure is this something similar to what I thought in this process of how they read a weather, and also this culture of weather reading in a very informal way is also disappearing. Where like you said, most of the urbanites, they don't see the sky anymore. They don't depend on we depend on technology rather than the ancient technology or wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add on from Scarlet?
Scarlet, Parco.
Yeah, so as mentioned by Vincci, that we want to bring this message to the people who come to this small fishing village to understand the life and how important it is that the sky can affect the daily life of fishermen, and how their life is intertwined with the weather, and how the fishing practices. So I think this is one of the points that we want to emphasize in this artwork by displaying their photographs taken by the villagers. But also at the same time, we want to kind of emphasize the beauties, the nature environment, the setting, the landscape of the Kaosai fishing village, where it sits in the valley of two islands. And at the same time, this is one of the rare places in Hong Kong you can see sunrise and sunset at the same time. So with this beautiful setup, and we want to kind of further emphasize the sky aspect, or the color of the sky in this artwork. And then I think this is also one of the things that the villagers are very proud of. They have a beautiful landscape with very nice scenery, and we want to bring it to the visitor, or to the people of Hong Kong who come to see this artwork.
Anything to add on, Scarlett?
Yes, I think another aspect is for them, the sky also mean Hong Seng Ge, the deity. Yeah, like they worship Hong Seng Ge a lot, and then although they have the wisdom to predict the weather, but like the condition of the sea is still very unpredictable. They always worship Hong Seng Ge to hope he will like bless them. So for them, the sky is not just about the scenery, the weather, but also Hong Seng Ge. So we through this artwork, we want to celebrate this spirit as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like looking into the sky is kind of like a prediction, while looking into the religious side, that is kind of like strengthen the prediction, like to hope that it's more stable or to a certain blessing kind of way. So I mean this is a very rich context behind this artwork. So well, before we close off this podcast, I would like to ask more about the research project. So what's next for the research project? And also I think I forgot to ask about, like, why is there any particular reason about the context of Kaosai village? So is what's make it so specific to be chosen as the site for Kaosai village from the wider scope of research? So maybe I'm not sure, maybe Vincci may add on to that, on why the selection of the village as a very specific study of the research.
With our village commoning project, yes, we actually approached many villages in Hong Kong. And I guess with Kaosai village, what was interesting is that when we actually do cultural mapping, resource mapping with them, they do realize that they have some common commons and commoning practices. Some of them may be still around. Some of them might not, might have died down already. And so there's an urge that there's a sort of collective intention that the community want to do something in order to perhaps revitalize the village, and that's why there's kind of mutually we're mutually interested to work together, so the development of this artwork is kind of one of the attempts, I guess, trying to see, okay, what may be something we can do together, and to create a new commons, and see how that goes. The future of the projects, the sort of the research aspect of it, the work, we are actually coming to an end of it. But like what we have discussed earlier on, we find that even though in a lot of village communities, they do have their own commons, maybe old ones, maybe still existing, and commoning practices, same thing, like they had these practices before, or they are still happening. Villagers might not really notice that much because that's their everyday life, is ongoing. They may be meeting with the fellow villagers every month, or every 6 months or something like that. So to further engage with them and to further the project, what we hope to do in the future is to perhaps get into something more tangible, but to help them to develop common goals, and then that may be the more tangible aspects of village revitalization. May not be really talking about the entire village, how that can be redeveloped. Maybe still small items, small aspects to start with. But we find that something more tangible is easier for villagers to understand how they can implement or re-implement some of the commoning practices they had before.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite interesting that you mentioned about the. I think. I mean, for me personally, I'm the fan of intangible work. That means I prefer to look into research and talking to people rather than, because I feel like most of the time I would question about the purpose of building something. For example, if let's say we wanted to do for art festival, I would rather do a workshop than the pavilion or installation. However, like you said, it's very right, because doing an artwork or installation together as there's an end goal rather than a workshop. You don't see the result being documented. Rather, the artwork itself is the document, is the result, is the outcome. Then for the non-architects, they can visualize it better because they can experience it as well, rather than a report. Maybe they will read it and then they will just put it aside, unfortunately. So I think that's very interesting observation, where looking into the few steps, looking down let's say the 1 or 2 years, or even after the team left the place, and then they will start picking up on their own. Right. But I'm quite curious. Maybe this is a rather tricky questions that I asked the other interviewees as well, looking into the afterlife of this art festival, and also what's the afterlife of the installation at Kaohsiung Village. So I'm quite curious, like, what's the best solution that you find is to make sure it's more sustainable in a sense? Do you find the next approach perhaps is to appoint a so-called community champion, rather than putting a lot of money to revitalize or to attract young people to move there? So I'm quite curious, is there any particular site-specific solution in this case not just looking into the economical side, but of course, I think usually that's the main problem, right? Because a lot of young people, they don't want to move back because there's no job security, or looking into the monetary side, there's no particular attraction for them to stay there. But from the research that ongoing since like 2 years ago, what I'm quite curious, like, what's the next step to cultivate the value of the place in a way.
Mm-hmm. So this question is more about the village, but not the artwork. The
Yeah. I think
sustainability of the artwork.
it same goes to the other artworks as well. I'm quite curious from your point of view. Perhaps you might not speaking on the other behalf, but I'm quite curious from your understanding, and also in general for so many villages that has been sort of forgotten in a sense. That what's the next step? May it be from the top bottom point of view, which is from the government or the policy side, or from the bottom up. And I hope it's not too tricky question. It's a very complicated questions that
Sure.
to unpack. Yeah.
Maybe I can answer about the village sustainability side. We did think about the sustainability of the artwork. Maybe Scarlet, Marco can elaborate later on. So to me, to be honest, the Gaosai village, compared to some other villages locally we have approached, at the moment, what is sort of the advantage of them is that there are still some villagers living in there. Their building structures are relatively in okay conditions, and then it's still doable that between if they take a boat or ferry from their village to Saigon, the town area, is still doable. Even though the commute now with the art festival, that there's the ferry. One thing that I guess the villagers are also very curious to see is after the festival, if the ferry that routes will continue or not. But anyway, in a way, if sort of the next generation of the villagers, now those who are living in the village, or the more active villagers in engaging with us, they are at the retirement age. So with this collaboration, actually, we saw some of the next generation starting to be more interested. So we see it as a good sign. And I'm just a wild guess. If some of the younger generations are interested to move back or have a more frequent or regular routine to go back and forth the village, perhaps Gaosai actually has the potential. Again, just as some other villages that we have been, or village communities we worked with, the physical condition of the village may not have what I just mentioned. We've seen it in Gaosai. Yeah, so I guess that there's potential, and partly, hopefully, with the art festival, the more interest, maybe the area will be able to get, and then perhaps some of the younger villagers may realize, oh, actually, people find our place interesting, and they may actually get more interesting in their own as well.
Oh, that's very interesting. I think the difficulty usually with such a community project to revitalize a certain area, it takes more labor, as in people, than money, I think, because usually how many people would willing to spend their time to work quite a battle, I would say, to against the quite a rather in a capitalistic world that we are living in. And you wanted to go back to the village to to look into the much more meaningful initiative rather than working from 9 to 5. I think a lot, maybe you might spend more time to engage with the village. It's almost like you are living there um as a job, and also work on the village is quite a challenging one, where how many young people actually willing to do that. I don't know, maybe Scarlet or Marco or Baco maybe can add on something to that. Yeah, as a villager, I mean, maybe any as a young researcher, what are the challenges or anything you would like to add on? Um,
Well, I don't, oh, well, of course, during the whole design process, we have different challenges from different parties. But I think one thing that we have also very clear in mind in our very first pilot meeting with the villager is that we want to establish this artwork not just for this art festival, but rather we want to give them a second life where it can span over multiple years, where the villagers can actually use this artwork as a common space or a gathering space. So we have put a lot of thoughts into how we curate this space, or basically the space provided underneath the artwork, and how we can incorporate them in with certain furnitures or setting where the villagers can actually use when the art festival is finished. So I think this is one of the challenge where we have to uh we want to basically take the needs, the villagers' needs, and how do we translate in a more artistic way into an artwork, and also and at the same time creating an experience for people who visiting this artwork. So I think this is also one of the answering one of the questions that you mentioned, the afterlife of this artwork, and also one of the challenges that we also face too. And also I think one thing is very important is that the villagers are not artists. So they have a very different perspective than academia or researchers or even artists. From their point of view, they take how practical it is. The artwork is very seriously. So based on this, we have at first we are shooting in two different angles. Like you want a more artistic way, or you want a very practical way, or near furniture like artwork. So at the end we kind of have we of course we have rounds of discussions, and eventually we come up with a design that all of us are very proud of and are very satisfied with the result. And this is also a very valuable kind of process, or valuable things that we have eventually that we all like.
I also want to add to Marco's point. Yeah, like after we like construct the artwork, and then when we visit the artwork with the villagers, we are very happy that they really like our artwork. Like they are very happy with the result, and then since the color plates are like we collect photos from them, and we have their name printed on each color plate. So they point to the color plate and say, this is for me, and this is for me, and this is for my daughter, etc., etc. So we also talk about the afterlife of the artwork. Maybe we are not sure whether we hope it can stay for as many years as possible. We also mentioned to them, if we may have to dismantle it, and they said no, we want it to be here for a little while. But also because of the upcoming the annual festival, the Hong Year Festival, they may need more space, and our artwork may have to be moved to elsewhere within the village. But one thing that we are sure about is that they really want it to stay in the village. And then another thing I want to add to Vinci's point is that when we talk to them before, I think they are very proud of their identity as a fisherman. And if you talk to them, they're they're very eager to tell their stories. So when we do engagement workshop with them, one of the common goal of the villagers is to increase public interaction such that the public will have greater interest in Jiaozhai history and culture and the environment, etc. So I think with the artwork, they are happy to have more attractions within the village. And then although the festival will come to an end like by the end of January, but still it can still attract people to the village, and then they can continue to share their legacy, and then also hopefully can improve some of the infrastructure within the village. For example, more regular ferry services, like Vincci mentioned, and also they always mention in the old days they could hike to Yintianzi on foot, but then because of the later development, the path is actually blocked. They always wanted to have the hiking path reopen one day, so this can also increase traffic to their village. If there are more people coming to the village, they are also willing to start some businesses in the village, or to have more villagers to play with the tourists, like to entertain the tourists and etc. Yeah. So
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm really impressed with, the well, I mean, there are two sides, right? One is much more on process where Marco mentioned about, most of the villagers, they are non-architects and they are general publics, where their understanding of art and architecture is very different from us. However, they are representing the view of the general public. How do they see us, and also how do we see them? From different level. That's where the complexity comes in, and where it comes to the product, which is the outcome of the installation, is kind of intertwined of both, right? Because it's not just like I'm the designer, I'm gonna say whatever I want, and then they also kind of they contribute their input as well. So that's where I hope the visitors who drop by to have a look at the Celestial Commons in not a very typical installation as the artwork, but also try to understand and contemplate what was the process behind. So I hope this podcast serve as the kind of like a quest of meaning behind this installation. So I guess that's the end. We had a very, very meaningful, and thanks a lot to Vincci, Scarlet, Marco, and Parco for this very, very intensive and very comprehensive sharing about the artwork. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
so
thanks,
I hope to see you in Hong Kong soon. So
sure, yeah.
I hope the artwork is still there. So maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks a lot for like post Christmas. I know it's a very busy time, but Happy New Year, and then we will catch up soon.
Thank you. Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
Thank you.
you.